Ahoy! Today we're talking about the patch notes for patch 8.7 as well as the bonus update for patch 8.6. It's a crazy patch, there's tons to go through, and there's a lot of information here that wasn't actually in the show, and some stuff that I wanted to break down a little bit more, so I'm going to have to look over to my second screen in between because there's a little bit of information there that I had to dig up first to have all the relevant information. And yeah, with that cleared up, let's get right into the changes. Don't have to spend time on the skins here. You know that from the patch notes show. If you want to see that, click the link for that at the end of the video. We're getting right into the changes to talk about them in detail. The first one here we don't need to talk about much. Soul Gem gets a 5% magical power bonus damage reduction from the passive effect. So really not much, just like a small nerf because it's pretty present at the moment. Same thing with Karen's Coin, 10 magical power reduction because it's also a very dominant item at the moment, kind of frequently built as a first item where Rod of the Hood used to be built. And I think this is also a bit of a preemptive nerf because with the next patch, movement speed items might get more value with boots being removed from the game and might be built earlier. And Karen's Coin would therefore be even better. So it's just a little bit of an offset to that, I suppose. And Stone of Gaia gets its passive nerfed for the knock-up component, or like the counter component of the passive, not the consistent sustain, but the one that happens under specific CCs, from 15% over 5 seconds to 8% over 5 seconds. So still a ton of sustain, really not a big deal, just not as overly potent in certain counter matchups. That's really all, and also maybe something with the thought that this will be built relatively early in the next patch. Morgan Le Fay gets a nerf to Sigil Mastery, increasing the cooldown from 10 to 12 seconds. This is, I think, pretty much what everyone expected. That's her strongest ability in general, due to the crowd control that it offers and relatively high damage overall as well. So increasing the cooldown here so she can't spam fear in team fights, I think, is pretty important. Though there will be other item changes that will possibly still allow her to do that. At the same time, Hi-Rez also acknowledged that her other variants of this ability are not that great and that they need some changes. And yeah, I could imagine that in the future we might also see some damage shifts on her towards the 3 maybe, because that's relatively underwhelming in comparison. But we'll find out about that. Persephone gets multiple nerfs, increasing the cooldown on harvest from 14 to 15 seconds, decreasing the bite scaling once again, this time from 40% to 35% for each plant you send out, and decreasing the scaling on flourish from 65% to 55%. So it's probably a little bit less than on old Persephone now when you put down a skull beforehand, not quite sure. But minor nerfs because she's pretty strong still, very reasonable in my opinion. As somebody who likes her new kit, I think these are the types of nerfs that she needs, and yeah, I'm very happy with the direction they're taking here. King Arthur gets absolutely destroyed. Overhead Slash gets the base damage reduced from 60 to 280 to 60 to 260. So early rank unaffected, but high ranks affected. Hamstring gets the base damage reduced from 60 to 300 to 60 to 280. Also, the higher ranks that are affected here. Again, these abilities still have scaling, so it's not like they don't do any damage at all or something. Sundering Strike gets the jab damage reduced from 100 to 340 to 100 to 320. So also the higher ranks here. This is the first version of the ult. And then the secondary version of the ult gets the landing hit base damage reduced from 50 to 290 to 50 to 250. And the landing hit HP damage decreased from 5 to 13% to 5 to 11%. This last bit here is just a tooltip change. It doesn't actually affect anything as far as I understand it. Honestly, these are heavy looking nerfs, but keep in mind that his early game is mostly unaffected by pretty much, yeah, any of this. So his early game damage output will be the same. It is the late game that they're looking at. In competitive, he's still performing better at times, depending on who plays him really. Whereas in non-competitive, he's usually not even performing that well. It's more of a perception thing. But after these nerfs, I feel like yeah, even though the nerfs are only at a specific point of the game, I think they will still feel impactful. Kukulin will definitely get even more impactful nerfs in my opinion. So Berserk gets his bonus health shield reduced from 10 plus 20% to 10 plus 10 per level. So this was previously a maximum of what? is it 20 per level, so we're talking about 410. That is now 210 instead. I always thought that the shield was overkill, because you get access to a whole new set of abilities after your other abilities with no downside at all compared to, well, very minor downsides like a different escape, but very limited downsides compared to other stand swappers. And you still have access to 4 abilities beforehand anyways. So I didn't see the reason for him getting a very strong shield along with that, and I think nerfing the shield is very, very reasonable. The other part of the nerf is really heavy though. Spear of Mortal Pain and Warcry both get their base damage decreased from 175 to 475 to 165 to 445. So something off the bottom, something off the top, but yeah, especially off the higher levels here. And on top of that, the cooldown is increased from 85 to 110. So this cooldown increase is only for Spear of the Mortal Pain. Warcry has a shorter cooldown anyways, and that's kind of what justifies this. I think they should have instead just increased the cooldown of Warcry significantly so that it is just more of a secondary ult and not like, I don't know, it's the same thing with Tiamat. I don't know why these stand swappers have like short cooldown ults in their other stances for some reason. I think Spear of the Mortal Pain obviously builds more rage, so it's more potent, but taking away or like giving that so much extra cooldown, it's a really, really heavy swing, especially when the shield thing is along with that. Whereas I think hitting Warcry instead with the cooldown would have been a more measured response here. That said, I think cooldown was very strong for a very long time, and him being out of the meta for a bit is not necessarily the worst thing. Plus, there are a lot of item changes, so we don't really know where the meta is going anyways. Sun Wukong also gets a preemptive strike. The next ability-based Bluestone Bully gets his base damage decreased on Master's Will from 90 to 310 to 90 to 290. Yeah, not the biggest deal, but still pretty significant for someone who relies so much on their base damage. Gilgamesh gets the dropkick fix that actually dealt a little bit too much damage in terms of base damage and scaling when hitting an enemy into a wall on all the higher ranks. So that was just too high. And the cooldown is increased from 14 to 16 seconds. And Winds of Shamash, the ultimate, has its initial damage decreased from 90 to 330 to 90 to 310. Just a little bit down here. So I think Gilgamesh is nearing a more balanced place, but I can definitely see why these nerfs were still necessary. Especially it was one of the most bugged anyways. So we will see where he is after this and after the item changes that we'll see next patch. I think overall it might just lead to so many shifts in total that we'll have to look at him and gods in general in a different light. Like it might be that he can somehow make his way through with certain basic attack focused items in jungle, for example, which would paint an entirely different picture from how he's played right now for the most part. Then we have Saul, who's getting a little bit of setup time on Stellar Burst, as well as some post-fire. Previously had a very long post-fire, then it had none, and now it has like 0.1 seconds here, 0.2 seconds there. So what this is supposed to do is give her just a tiny bit of delay before she fires a basic attack after the ability, while not giving her like very significant delay. So it shouldn't really be as bad as it was before, just not as instant as it is right now. And we will see how that plays out. Janus gets a nerf to his ultimate, decreasing the base damage from up to 700 to up to 600 instead, and the scaling from 75% to 65%. I think that's fine. He's just been performing decently well, and the ultimate has always been a big frustration factor about this card, and yeah, that's all. And Raijin also gets a nerf to Percussive Storm, increasing the cooldown from 9 seconds to 10 seconds, and Reiju's market duration being reduced from 4 to 6 seconds to now being 4 seconds at all ranks, which also comes with a slow, apparently, that will then not stick to the enemy for as long if you're not choosing to proc it right away. So, relatively small nerfs, but I think the Percussive Storm part is still something that you feel a little bit. And that brings us to the second part, to the 8.7 update notes. Here again we have a lot of skins. These skins don't concern us in this though, so if you want to look at them, do so in the show because they are really cool skins. But we are here for the changes. The first one here, here's all the items from the battle pass as well, by the way, because you haven't really seen those yet. The reason why I'm saying this and why I'm stopping here is because I really want this avatar, and I have to get to the prestige check for that, and I don't know if I will do that, so find out, but yeah. And then we have obviously the ranked reset from Masters and Grandmasters only, above 2400 MMR or above Diamond 1. And Duel gets an extra ban, 6 bans now in total. Now, we also have a bunch of bug fixes here, but yeah, the role trading was bugged again. They fixed that. Then we have a ton of god fixes of various kinds, but I don't think there's anything super significant here, unless I missed it when going through it. Poseidon gets some animation changes, so you can see more clearly like when you're gonna get CC'd by the Kraken, so that's pretty cool. Yeah, but I think it's the most major one. Seer of the Jungle fixed an issue where this item was not applying bonus damage to jungle bosses, so that's going to be interesting. Bamba Spear fixed various issues where this item was not applying bonus damage or healing when killing jungle monsters, bosses, and structures. Yes, that has been happening since the start of the season, and they finally, with a mid-season patch, decided that the healing and bonus damage should work, and now maybe this item might actually be functional. We'll have to find out if it is, but yeah, it might feel completely different from how it was. Actually, I want to write that down. I want to check that once again for the 5th time if Bamba Spear might finally actually work. So yeah, let's see that. And if your sigil would sometimes not be usable, and really important, certain guards, only a few guards apparently, but certain guards like Shankui, while using Book of Demons, or Kronos while using Stop Time, were not able to use beats immediately when they were CC'd, and that should be fixed now. I feel like there might still be other circumstances that cause that, but that's one of those situations where you're saying like, what, I used my beats, why didn't I get out? And then apparently you're stuck in the middle of an ability. Okay, now we have the Conquest Map, which gets like massive changes and a bunch of new camps. I wish they would have had like a map in here that shows the changes as well, but so the first thing is, well, I'm going to read through these here real quick because I think it makes it easier. So Dual Lane has a new side jungle outside of the lane, as the landmark here has was washed away by the wave. This is the Draugr area. Dual Lane Alpha Harpies have had their pathing adjusted and split into 2 Alpha Harpy spawns, one that favors each team. So it's no longer one in the middle, but 2 split between them. Soul Lane has a new XP camp area marked by a wrecked ship on the environment. This is kind of between the buff camp and Fire Giant area, basically. Back happy location on the red buff side have been adjusted to make room for a new camp. That is the green buff camp. We'll get to that in a second. Map's lighting has been returned to its 8.1 state. I love it. And then there's various visual changes across the map. You've seen those in the show, and the vine walls have been removed. So the Draugr has a buff. So the Draugr is the one that is on the duo side, in the middle of the duo side, off to the left, mini side jungle, which is contestable. If you slay it, then towers and phoenixes receive a stacking buff of 7% increased power and 5% damage mitigation for every allied guard within the radius. Maximum of 3 stacks lasts 240 seconds. So this is not a buff to the players, this is a buff to the towers themselves, meaning you can give them up to 21% extra power and up to 15% mitigations. Which is also interesting because it may mean it may, in a siege, sometimes make sense to have someone, like, if they're maybe already halfway in lane, go to that objective instead and provide your team with a buff, because 3 people are enough to apply the buff to the tower. And, or the Phoenix. And then, yeah, we have the stats here. Not going to go through them in detail, but what's important is this provides 30 XP to your team and 35 gold to your team. So it's a team focused objective. And this scales up as well. So that I think is very interesting. And then we have the green buff, which is also a Draugr. And this is actually so crazy. So, while wearing this, jungle buffs on nearby allied guards will not expire. This effect does not apply to other support buffs. It also grants plus 50 maximum health and mana, plus an additional 30 for every 50 total protections on the wearer. It also grants a 10 MP5 and HP5 once enhanced. So, and keep in mind, you have 3 buffs on that side that get enhanced now. So this buff basically freezes the timer on buffs on nearby allies, as far as I understand it. So if you walk close to them, then their buff doesn't expire, doesn't tick down, and then if you walk away, it would tick down further. So you can make it last twice as long technically if you're next to an ally all the time through the duration of your own buff. It does provide this extra health, and from what it seems, because of the base protections, people on my Patreon Discord already looked through that. I think the conclusion was that usually you'll have the extra 30 health and mana for the first 50 protections on level 1 if you build a little bit of defense, like if you build a slightly defensive item, which is probably going to be very common now. So you could get 80 extra maximum health, which is quite significant. And this one only has 300 health plus 135 extra health, and also provides very low XP with 35 plus 9 on rank 1. So this is apparently supposed to be soloable by the support, which may mean that the support may start on this buff camp now, and then, I don't know, maybe rotate to red from there, or maybe the jungler will help with red or whatever. I don't know how it'll work out. It could be something like the carry and the mage do red buff together, and the support starts on green buff, and then the carry and support go to purple together and just come into lane a little bit later. I don't know, but at the same time, it might be complicated with a wave. So we'll find out what the strategy will be here, if this is something that you do later, but then you don't really want to go back for it later because it's quite far away. Oh, it's going to be very, very interesting. It also may mean that the support is tempted to stay more towards mid, because it's easier to rotate to green from there. But at the same time, it also could mean that they are staying closer to duo, because there's the other camp as well with the alpha harpies, and maybe they just rotate into jungle more with the ADC, with the carry. So yeah, really not sure yet. And then we have various balance changes, and some of these are really important actually, because the buffs, the enhanced buffs, get changes. The damage buff gets its lifesteal bonus increased from 7 to 10%. The speed buff gets its movement speed increased from 5 to 7%. Never thought I'd see a day where Harris decides to increase the movement speed on something. Like, we had to complain so long to even get it on there, and now they actually added some more in a meta where no one needs boots anymore. And the enhanced mana buff gets a maximum mana bonus from 10 to 15%. Actually, forgot it had that. I thought it was just the CDR, but hey, whatever. Don't think anyone uses it for that part, but hey. And then we have some changes to the camps as well, or like to the objectives. Fire Giant, slightly higher health and protections, which maybe offsets the fact that people don't need boots anymore and are building slightly heavier damage earlier. And same with Oni Fury, slightly increased health and protection. Oracles, increased health. This is important for junglers. Gotta watch out with that. The Lesser Scorpion provides more healing now and has less health and less scaling in terms of health. So this is easier to solo for carries now to get some extra sustain. And the Alpha Harpy, which is the one that is on the duo side and now near the Gold Fury and on both sides, had its health increased from 630 to 580 and protections from 12 to 9. So yeah, doesn't seem to be too bad. Still not the easiest one to solo, I think, but yeah, I don't know. The scaling is also decreased significantly from 150 to 90, so maybe that's more where the weight is. But yeah, still no Draugr essentially. Then we have Classic Joust. Just to quickly conclude this, like the map is going to play completely different. Junglers are going to have a very interesting time though, because they might rotate to solo more with the XP camp there and everything. So we will see how this plays out, but I'm super excited. And if you want to join me for PTS for this, hop on my Discord or follow me on Twitch. All the links are down below, or follow me on Twitter. I'll announce everything there when PTS games go live, so you can see that craziness in action. Okay, moving on to Classic Joust and Duel. Once a Phoenix is slain, all ranged auto attacks will now pass through its pedestal. And the Benevolent starter item and both of its upgrade are now banned in these modes. I think that's a very important one that a lot of people are asking for. Arena has its theme changed to the Stranger Things Arena. And now the 3 lowest XP members of each team will now receive 1 extra bonus XP per second. Very interesting. I don't know how much impact that really has in Arena. But especially because it's the lowest 3 XP members, might see some more higher levels towards the end of the game, I suppose. Meditation Cloak gets a rework, and now it's enter a meditative state where nearby ally guards within 50 units restore 8 plus 5% of their missing health and mana each tick. So a total of 28%. Heals occur for once every second for 4 seconds. With a cooldown of 160 seconds. I think this is pretty crazy. Because the total health that you can get in late game, I did the math earlier, I think it was around 500 or something for like a 2000 health target. Something like that. It's quite a lot. I don't really know where this is gonna go, because it's a very nice defensive sustain item. Then if you look at the upgrade, Meditation Cloak upgrade rework, it has the same healing effect, and additionally each pulse reduces cooldowns for all abilities by 0.5%. These pulses obviously still work the same way, so it's 2 seconds cooldown reduction. But looking at this in combination with Steph of Murden, which comes later, it looks interesting. It looks a bit scary. It looks a bit like there is a chance that we would see a fair bit of Meditation Cloak, because even if the enemy team has anti-heal, it would still have solid value, putting it like next to Shell. So yeah, very, very interesting, but I'm glad that this is getting a more viable path. Then we have Sundering Spear. This is probably one of the weirdest parts of the patch. So this is getting split into 2. Hang on, let me open my Sundering Spear. It's getting reworked to fire a bolt that travels 70 units, stopping on the first guard hit, dealing 10% of their current health as true damage and reducing any active shields by 50%. Targets take 10% increased damage for 5 seconds, stacking 2 times. This relic has 2 charges, so you can fire it twice. I don't know what happens if you choose to only fire it once in terms of cooldowns. And it has a 90-second cooldown, whereas previously it was 110 seconds. So before, this was 15% of your current health in a single shot. But there wasn't even any increased damage on the first rank. So yeah, I'm not even sure. Obviously, shields were completely destroyed before. Now it's 50% of the shield. But it seems like it's going to be stronger. And more importantly, the upgrade does the same thing here. But instead deals 15% of the current health as true damage and reduces any active shields by 75%. So effectively, if you have 2 enemies, because you still have 2 charges, you can reduce each of their shields by 75%. Which seems a bit excessive, but more excessive is the fact that it's 15% of their current health twice, when previously it was 15% of their current health once, even on the upgraded form. So since you can stack it as well, the damage taken increase is just the same as before, but slightly delayed, right? It used to be 20%, now it's 10%, but you have to fire it twice, you have to hit it twice. But Sundering Spear as an upgrade takes, I think it was like 28% of the target's current health. if you fire both shots on the same target. Like, no, 28% of the max health if you're shooting the first shot at max health and then the second shot after. So that's a lot of damage that anyone can fire as true damage. You can use that as a tank. Which makes me think it might be too much damage. It might just be like too much burst out of this alone. So I'm not really sure. Might be a bit too scary. Then we have a Bracer for Undoing is removed from the game. Instead, we now have Bracer of Radiance. Place a radiant glow at a target location for 90 seconds. Allies who move through this field gain 10% increased power if above half health, or 10% movement speed if below half health for 8 seconds. This fragment acts as a ward. If destroyed, the cooldown of the relic is reduced by 20 seconds. 100 seconds cooldown. The upgrade is Bracer of Radiance upgrade. Doesn't actually have its own name, but the difference here is that this Radiant Glow now acts as a sentry ward. And this is a bit confusing for me. Like, one thing that really stands out to me is that the upgrade doesn't seem like significantly stronger. Like, it just turns the ward into a sentry ward. Everything else stays the same. It's odd. Like, I think it's interesting insofar that you have this 10% increased power, which is also stacking with other effects of that kind, basically. And this could be really interesting for like a fire giant or something. But then it's also a support relic because it's like a free ward that you can use. But then it's also destroyable by the enemy team. You can just use a sentry to take out that buff, which I don't know if it will happen in the middle of a fight, really, but yeah, it is definitely interesting, and we might see some ward wars because of it. I'm not sure if it's gonna catch on with Sunder and with Med being such interesting options right now. Not sure how this will compare, but it could be interesting for certain like burst attempts of objectives or something. So we'll see if and how this is used. Now, I've already mentioned it multiple times, boots have been removed from the game, and instead all players in all modes now receive 18% movement speed over their first 7 levels. So that slowly scales up now. I think this is a very interesting change. Obviously, elixir speed removed along with that, and this opens up a lot of opportunities, and a lot of changes have to be made because of it, but I'm really glad they did it. Enchanted Spear gets its magical penetration decreased from 10 to 5, but its power increased from 30 to 40. And Heavy Mace gets its pen decreased from 10 to 5, but its cost decreased from 1,500 to 1,450. So technically can run the tier 1 easier with a pot or something. So yeah, just very minor changes, so they don't become too overwhelming. And also Ikaival decreased attack speed, reduction from 10% to 7% per stack, and increased physical power from 30 to 35. So this is a little bit more of of its own item and not just an anti-trade item. So I think this is a very interesting one. I could imagine that Ikaival may very well gain value in this meta as well. Not even just on hunters, but as an early jungle item or something as well. That's going to be interesting. Mystical Mail, super cool. It changed the passive damage from 40 to 30, but plus 1 per level, meaning it goes up to 50. And I think that's super cool. I really like that. I think, you're not going to build Mystical Mail on level 1 anyways. So you're not going to usually end up with like 30 damage. So by the time you get it, maybe say you get it really early on level 5 or something, you'd still get 35 damage out of it instead of 40. So it's still definitely significant for clearing. And keep in mind that Mystical Mail often leads to the highest damage numbers in the game still. It's just so much. It's not necessarily kill damage, but it's so much damage overall throughout a fight. And buffing that damage, I think, makes this very, very scary. And I just love Mystical Mail as an item, so I'm not complaining. Winged Blade decreased the crowd control reduction from 20% to 10%. It's kind of because, movement items might be a little bit stronger anyways. Then we have Steph of Murden. This is, I think, one of the craziest changes. Let me pull up my sheet here. So, Decrease magic power from 110 to 95. New passive. When your ultimate ability has finished casting, you gain Murden's Brilliance, which provides 80% uncapped cooldown reduction, decaying to 40% uncapped cooldown reduction over 7 seconds. Uncapped cooldown reduction overrides normal cooldown reduction. At the end of the 7 seconds, you lose Murden's Balance. This can only occur once every 45 seconds. So, I had a look at this, and I wanted to see how the cooldown works. So after like on the first second you have 80% cooldown reduction. On the second second you have 73%. On the third second you have 66%. On the fourth second you have 60%. On the fifth second you have 53%. Sixth seconds you have 47%. And then on the seventh second you are on 40%. What that means for Habois, which was the first one that comes to mind, with his 3 seconds cooldown on the 1, is that if you use it right after it comes off cooldown, you basically just use it over and over and over. Like the cooldown is initially 0.6 seconds, then 0.8, then 1.0, 1.2, 1.4, 1.6, 1.8. So you can easily get like 5 shots in, maybe even 6, I think. I think the biggest thing is holding it back at that point is the animation of the ability that might slow it down a little bit. But it sounds absolutely insane to me, and I'm really not sure how this is going to be working out for certain gods. For healers as well, I can just heal spam after that. But yeah, especially gods that have very short cooldowns on something. So yeah, I'm a bit scared. I think previous Steph of Murden had its scary potential here and there as well, but I think this one might even be scarier. This might backfire hard. War Flag. This is also, once again, super crazy. So War Flag has a new passive now. Getting assist when an enemy dies provides a stack that gives 1% movement speed and 2% attack speed for 8 seconds to nearby allies for up to 10 with up to 10 stacks. While at or above 4 stacks, each time you damage an enemy guard, you restore 15 mana and health to nearby allies within 55 units, and you gain 8 gold. One question I have here is if it restores it to yourself. This wording is like slightly different from previous War Flag, where it was something about like all allies. So I don't know how that'll work. And the other big question is how exactly the gold gain works. Hyris said that it works with damage over time effects. The example was Sylvanas, but I'm not sure if that was actually meant that way or that was a misunderstanding, because otherwise there could be some dot-heavy niche gods that could really abuse this. So yeah, I kind of want to know first where they stand with this, like how exactly this works, and then we'll learn more about it. So I'll have to test that out in PTS. And the same thing especially applies for the upgrade as well, which gives 2% movement speed and 4% attack speed. And the same thing here, if you're above 4 stacks, each time you damage an enemy guard, you restore 1.25% health and mana to nearby allies within 55 units and refresh the duration of these stacks. And again, that makes me wonder how much healing could a dot guard get out of that? Is it really as much as it sounds? Because then it would just be absolutely ridiculous, and I think then it would just be like the uncontested best upgrade on some supports, on some builds really. Maybe like I'm saying some, maybe I mean some D, because that could actually work quite well together as well. Then we have Corrupted Bluestone, which gets a rework, a minor rework honestly. Decrease the physical power from 60 to 50, now provides 150 health. Will now provide its stacking benefit for applying corruption rather than actively tracking how many applications of corruption are active. The stacking benefit now lasts 6 seconds. So no longer, like if you apply it to an enemy and they no longer have it on it, but you kept applying it to other enemies, then you will keep the stacks, as far as I understand it. Unless this also means that it applies multiple times to the same enemy, which I doubt. I wonder what happens with the stack, because it doesn't really state anything about refreshing or like how it expires, but I'm assuming it, like every new stack would refresh it now for consistency's sake. The attack speed that is provided by each stack, however, has been reduced from 15 to 10%, kind of to balance that a little bit. And now stacks also provide 4% increased protections. So overall, a more tank-focused item. I think that is what is needed. Like Corrupted Bluestone is eventually it's effectively the option for gods that want to still go like ability focused into Bluestone first, but then opt into something that has a little bit of bruiser capabilities for basic attacking gods afterwards, and I think it provides that very well. Now I think the stats are much better for that. Death Toll now heals for 75% on melee cleaves, not on ranged cleaves, so not Heimdall. I think this could make it a lot more interesting for Soul Lane. We'll see if it's enough, but yeah, that's what I have my eye on. Well, maybe we'll see Osiris and Bellona make a comeback. Death Embrace also gets the same treatment, so same thing. And speaking of attack speed gods, Berserker's Shield can only be built by assassins and warriors now because hunters always break things and abuse them. Now it provides 25% attack speed instead of 15%, and the physical protection is increased from 20 to 35. This item still not the tankiest with 35 protections, but certainly provides a decent mix of stats now for attack speed focused characters, and I can also see why they didn't want to bring these stats back on the item while having it used by hunters, because then if they box with it in lane, it's just going to be the same dull thing over and over. So yeah, I think this is a good change. This item was never intended to be used by hunters primarily, yeah, I don't think it can be balanced for both. Shogun's Kusari no longer provides corruption reduction, but provides 150 health, and the attack speed aura is increased from 25% to 30%. Pretty significant buffs in my opinion. I think this item could be seen a lot more now. I really like this as well for certain solos that lately have all been like opting towards Talisman of Energy mostly. Serrated Edge increased physical power from 25 to 35. Yeah, it was just a little bit too low in my opinion, so I'm very much fine with this. Mannequin Scepter increased burn damage from 12 over 2 seconds to 16 plus 5% of your magical physical power over 2 seconds. So this will still not match Mannequin Mace in total damage output with the scaling that it has, but will have a fair bit more scaling. Along with that, the amount of stacks is reduced from 4 to 3, and now the health restoration is changed from 15 flat to 3% of your maximum health. Along with that, the mana is changed from 15 flat to 5% of your maximum mana. So a lot more value for later stages of the game. The problem that remains with this item is that you have to have the dot applied to the target when you kill it, which often leads to you taking more damage in the process, which previously made it not worth it. We'll have to see if it makes it worth it now. I mean, it's gonna be a high heal. Like, even if you just have like 1,000 HP, you'd have 30 heal per target instead of 15. But still not necessarily the most insane thing, depending on the point of the game. And then Mannequin Upgrade also gets the health restoration adjusted so that the stats match Mannequin Scepter here. Sentinel's Gift has its cost decreased from 600 to 550, and the magical protections increased from 7 to 10, so it can compete with Benevolence a little bit better. Fair enough. Conduit Gem now has 100 mana, not much to say about that. Nice little change. Vampiric Shroud has its health increased from 75 to 100, and the physical protection increased from 10 to 15. Bloodsoaked Shroud, the upgrade form, has its physical protection increased from 40 to 55, and the health restore from 12 flat to 2% of your maximum health, which is going to be significantly more, as well as the mana restore from 6 to 2% of your maximum. I'm assuming this also means mana. It says health, but it's probably mana. And in return for these higher defensive stats and more healing, the lifesteal is removed from the item entirely. I think this makes the item more interesting for the gods that it's meant to be for. I think those gods didn't really use lifesteal very much, and I think that that's a good choice overall. Also, it's nice that Bloodsoaked Shroud is more of an option through that, so you can, like, if you're getting heavily focused in a game, you can consider it more. Or, I mean, if you're playing solos that use these items, then that obviously works too. Sacrificial Shroud has its magical power increased from 100 to 115, because it is just not quite on par with the others. It needs to have super high damage in order to feel rewarding enough, because you sacrifice some health as well. Warrior's X increased bonus damage, passive bonus damage, and health steal from 30 to 35, plus 1 per level. So this is up to 55, and I think will make this item significantly more appealing. That's really all. It just makes it like so that it makes a bigger difference to just apply it even once. Atalanta's bow increased the power from 35 to 40. Hi-Rez wants to force this item a lot. I think they're kind of trying to force it a little bit because they took Berserker's Shield away from Hunters as well. If you compare the stat-wise with Hasted Katana, it's always funny how big the disparity in overall stats is. So yeah, I think this may be getting picked up again if Hunter players want to rely on the passive. And that's the big problem, right? Leather Cowl now provides 7 MP5, Hunter's Cowl now provides 15 MP5, so you just don't run out of mana as much. Warding Sigil decreased cost from 700 to 600. Also a good decision, wasn't really that popular. Tainted Seal decreased the health reduction from 20 to 15%, but now you are healed for 100% of the healing reduced. Very, very cool, makes it a lot more interesting early game. Tainted Amulet increased the healing reduction from 20 to 30%. That is also very interesting because that makes me feel like now you're basing your choice for the upgrade more on which kind of defense you need more of, rather than one just being outright better. Unless, of course, you just need super, super, super heavy healing reduction. Tainted Blessblade also gets its power increased, 10 extra physical power from 40 to 50, and 15 extra magical power from 60 to 75. Jade Emperor's Crown gets its health increased from 150 to 200. This is always interesting because it's always kind of competing with sovereignty, like sometimes one's better, sometimes the other. Though I'm not sure if this will be enough to push it over the edge, because especially the HP 5 that sovereignty provides is so valuable. Tyrannical Plate Gem has its cost decreased from 2600 to 2400. Not really much to say about that. We'll see if it gets more use. Amaterasu gets the charge rate for Heavenly Reflection increased both for taking damage as well as dealing damage, which is nice. Dazzling Offense increased the base damage from 80 to 240 to 80 to 260. So a fair bit of extra damage here, which I think also scares with the higher ranks, with the multiple hits. So yeah, I think surprisingly strong sounding buffs to her, in my opinion, and we'll see how they go over. Artemis, Transgressor's Fate, has its base damage increased from 25 to 85 to 35 to 87, which means it deals more than 100 damage on rank 1, which is pretty interesting. Decrease the cooldown of the ability from 18 to 10 seconds to 14 to 10 seconds. So pretty significant early swings. Vengeful Assault has its movement speed increased from 20 to 25%, and the cooldown decreased from 18 to 14 to 16 to 14. So a lot more safety for Artemis overall, a lot more mobility. That's quite nice. Baba Yaga has the cooldown of Blast Off decreased from 16 to 14 seconds, which honestly feels fair considering the ability is relatively slow in the first place. And Home Sweet Home has the shield health scaling increased from 15 to 25%, and the knockback strength increased from 330 to 400. So yeah, I don't know how much Baba still needs after this. She has to be doing well at some point. It has to be now. Baron Samdi, Hysteria, increased the Hysteria applied from basic attacks from 2 to 5. Pretty significant in my opinion, as someone who likes to throw in a few basics on Baron Samdi, just to have something to do in the downtime. Vivid Gaze increased Hysteria applied from 10 to 15 per hit, and added power debuff duration to the description. This is especially important because now you can proc the passive if you just hit both shots of Vivid Gaze. I definitely think it provides a lot of utility. I mean, the Vivid Gaze effect is 30% movement speed reduction and power reduction. So I think, if I'm not mistaken, let me check, but I think that's what it was. Yeah, so having that, not guaranteed, but more likely to happen, I think is pretty big. Consign Spirits decreased the cooldown from 15 seconds down to 11 seconds to now 13 seconds to 11 seconds. Which is interesting because this is usually, unless you're playing very aggressive, the ability you level first and get a lot of sustain out of it, and now the cooldown is going to be significantly lower. So yeah, pretty solid impact. Significantly lower cooldown for Daji as well. 1000 cuts decreased from 13 seconds to 11 seconds. Hachiman gets multiple buffs on Eagle Eye. Increased the ammo count from 3 to up to 4 depending on the rank to 4 at all ranks. Decreased the cooldown from 12 seconds to 12, scaling down to 10 seconds. And decreased the mana cost of the ability from 50 to 90 to 50 at all ranks, making it a lot easier to use it more frequently while also firing more shots. Pretty strong. Heavenly Banner increased physical power scaling from 45% to 55% and increased attack speed from 5 to 15% to 10 to 20%. Feels like almost a bit too much. I feel like the Eagle Eye buffs alone would have been sufficient, but yeah, that's just my impression. Hades, Devour Souls increased or decreased cooldown from 11 seconds to 10 seconds. And Pillar of Agony, when Pillar of Agony damages an enemy, all of Hade's abilities have their cooldown reduced by 0.2%. And I'm assuming this applies for each tick of the ability, so you can reduce your cooldowns really, really quickly. Habwa, Water Cannon, increased base damage from 60 to 260 to 80 to 260. As I said, this will be very interesting with Steph of Murden especially, and then he gets a damage buff along with that, so let's go Habwa. Hell, Decay, increased magical power scaling from 50% to 60%, decreased mana cost from 55 to 75 to 45 to 65. And then we see similar treatment for Restoration here. Mana cost decreased from 55 to 75 to 45 to 65. And for Repulse, the magical power scaling is increased from 70 to 75%. Yeah, not really much to say about this. Also, again, seems really strong overall. With the new items, it could be even more interesting. Hera, increased magical power scaling on Argus first hit, second hit, and third hit by 5 each, 5% each. And Royal Assault increased fist damage from 80 to 280 to 80 to 300. Just giving it a little bit more presence, more commanding presence on the battlefield. I think that's very fair. I think it's understandable. She hasn't been particularly favored for a while now. Yamaganda increased basic attack damage from 9.6 to 10.4. Keep in mind that his basic attacks tick very quickly. And Submerge increased movement speed from 25% to 35%. That is something that I really like. Kali increased the base mana from 205 to 225. Nimble Strike decreased mana cost from 70 to 60. Lash increased blade damage from 35 to 75 to 37 to 85. So the total increase is from 105 to 225 to 111 to 255. And Incense gets the mana cost decreased from 70 to 60. Massive bunch of buffs for a goddess that might be doing well in the next patch anyways because of the boost removal. So this is going to be very interesting to watch and see how that plays out. That may have been a minor mistake or a large mistake. We'll find out. Mulan gets her base health increased from 480 to 490, and per level base health increased from 82 to 84. Cross Strike has its physical power scaling increased from 30 to 35%, so a total of 30 to 90 now goes up to 35 to 105%. Grapple now provides 5% protection in addition to the movement speed when mastered, and increased grapple protections from 20 to 40 to 25 to 45. I think especially the additional protections that she then has basically at all times is pretty interesting. At least I think it's I think it should be the effect that that is permanently applied essentially, if I'm understanding it right. It should be. It's in addition to the movement speeds. Yeah. Odin gets some reverts to old nerfs. Lunge and Raven Shout both get their cooldown decreased by 1 second. And Gangnam Might has the physical power scaling throw damage increased from 50 to 60%. Haven't really seen much of him, so that's fair. Let's see if these buffs bring him back. Olaran, Overflowing Divinity, increased magical power scaling from 15% to 25%, and along with that Sanctified Field, decreased the cooldown from 140 to 110 to 120 to 110, and Olaran now gains 40% crowd control reduction while in this area, apparently because when he gets CC'd, this CC also affects him longer, so that's meant to offset that. I don't know if Olaran needs these buffs, like just based on the fact that we don't know how he'll perform next patch, but based on what we're seeing at the moment, it seems more reasonable, even though I'm always not very happy with them buffing the ultimate at all, and I'd rather see them find other solutions for that. Ratatuska gets all of the icons changed. The first rank now provides 2% movement speed, the second provides 4% movement speed, and the third provides 6% movement speed. Like some people said that this is effectively still a buff, obviously because boots are not in the game anymore. But I don't think it's that easy because we have to keep in mind that while you have more attack speed, more movement speed than before, the items, these icons in general, don't necessarily come with the best in class stats. They kind of just work more around the passive, and the passive is often necessary for Ratatuska, so that makes it really hard to make that fair and balanced, I would say. And we'll have to see, but I don't think it's necessarily something where you buy these upgrades every game still, if you consider it for a moment. Most people may not. And here we have with the Evergreen Icon, we have misread that. Brain is fried. We're almost at the end. Susano and Terra both have their abilities, the Typhoon and Crushing Earth respectively, changed so that they can refire them even after dead. I'm not sure if Susano can still control the reaction, probably not, but those don't go to waste anymore. Thor, Warrior's Madness, increase the radius from 30 to 55 units. So the passive will provide you with more power, I think it is. Damage power. I think it's power. Even if the enemies are further away. And Anvil of Dom increased the physical power scaling from 90% to 100. He's been out of the meta for a while, so I think it's fair they get some buffs. Thoth, Hieroglyphic Assault, increased magical power scaling from 20% to 25%. Keep in mind this is a little bit more actually, because multiple successive shots on a guard can deal more damage. So yeah, it's not gonna be massive, but I think maybe all the overall scaling of all shots is like 80 or something now. Tiamat, summon serpents. When serpents damage a phoenix or titan, not tower, they take 1 pip of health in damage, so they die very quickly on those, can't deal much damage to them. Summon beast, decrease the beast lifetime from 30 to 15 seconds. Yeah, I think the serpent still needed nerfs, so I'm happy this happened, and the beast also lingered around for way too long. Faye gets just some mana cost reduction here for both abilities, for Radiate and Pulse, from 60 to 80 to 45 to 65. Nox gets increased minion damage on the Shadow Lock if you shoot it in the wave, from 50 to 190 to 50 to 210. And the scaling is increased from 40 to 50%. I feel like this is still not going to be enough for Nox. I think she needs a lot more, but it's a start. It's a good change as such. Then we have Yemoja. Yemoja no longer needs to gain mana or MP5 to obtain extra Omi. She instead gains 1 Omi at level 6, 11, and 16. Mana and MP5 are now converted to health at the rate of 20%, which is apparently the same as Kukulin. Bouncing Bubble and Moonstrike now have an internal delay if you spam them too much. You can use 2 abilities, and then there won't be any delay, so you can use the Bouncing Bubble and Moonstrike very quickly after each other. But after that, it'll get slowed down. Along with that, the base damage of Bouncing Bubble is increased from 30 to 170 to 40 to 180, but the post fire is also increased from 0.3 to 0.43. And River's Rebuke has its cooldown increased from 110 to 120. So a bit of shifting around here in some ways, but generally I would say more to the nerfing side. We have to see how it goes overall. Anyways, that is it for watching. Yeah, like I said, brain is fried. That was a lot of talking with very little breaks. A lot to go through. Thank you guys very much for watching. If you're new to the channel, feel free to sub button with the bell, and I hope to see you for the next one soon. ZiSotto, out.